Hello, Serene.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good.
How you doing?
Doing. Doing a lot.
You got a lot going on?
Lots and lots. Yeah, all good stuff. But just...
Okay. People other than us are keeping you busy?
Yep.
Yep. I'm in the new house, but the one place I don't really have set up is my office.
It looks very similar to my favorite office. Like
It does have a great view, which is nice, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I'm watching the sun set over the houses and near the water, and
You kind of look like if I didn't know you were at home, like that you're sitting in my favorite office, but like where the conference or
the conference room, yes, the conference table, yes.
My favorite office.
Oh, I know where I have this written down. I'm trying to remember all the members on this committee. You could answer this question, Serene, being a...
Yes.
So we actually don't, this is the first meeting of this committee ever, so we don't actually have a chair.
Oh, well, we usually, I recommend usually appointing the chair at the second meeting, just because I feel like for the first meeting, they're still getting their feet under them and you're giving them an orientation and roles and responsibilities and all of that. Do you guys do that presentation, like a role and responsibilities presentation?
We were going to talk a little bit about that, but that's also something, if you would, you might want to, because you could talk about Prop 39 bond oversight committees.
I can.
I know you could.
I have actually a very well done, I think, presentation on, and it actually lays out the committee's role versus the staff's role versus the board's role in the process. So It's actually, it's easy. I think reviewing it that way helps everybody understand what their particular role is as they sit in, these meetings.
Wonder if we could do that tonight.
I could definitely do it at the next one.
The next one, okay.
Yeah, because I'd want to, I haven't, the last time I did that was, when was it? It was, I want to say October, November. So I'd want to just make sure that it's got all the bells and whistles.
You knew what you were doing, yeah. So, and it's okay if I just run the meeting initially?
Yeah.
This first meeting, and then next meeting we would appoint?
Yes, that's what I typically recommend for committees. I think it's
great.
helpful to have the first meeting to get a lay of the land.
Okay, we have a legal opinion. Call it good.
Unless your bylaws require you to do it for the first meeting, but they typically don't.
So we're good with staff and board liaison, but no members yet.
We have Lou.
Oh, Lou's there. Okay. Oh, and I see Shiloh's coming on.
Had Lou.
Good evening. Yes, I am here. Hi.
Hi. So this time it seems we have Serene going first, and then Shiloh, you'll be going second. So after we do a little bit of introduction with this committee, then Serene will do a little bit of Brown Act training. And then we'll have, then Shiloh, you'll do your bit. Shiloh, will you be showing presentation? Putting stuff.
I can share my screen to go over the draft. I believe you all have a copy of it as well, or the draft of the final report, I believe. But or no, it looks like it might be draft. So either way, I can share my
Okay.
screen, or if everybody wants to do that.
If you would, that'd be great. Oh, I just made Lou a co-host. I was meaning to, I was making you a co-host. Hang on a second. It moved around on me.
Hi, Hans.
Sorry, I'm late. Hello.
Hello. Hey, Hans.
You're the second member here, so I wouldn't call that late.
And we're waiting.
Recording in.
Here's Melissa.
Hi, I'm stuck in traffic, so I'm gonna be on my phone,
Okay.
but I'm here. Okay.
We're still waiting for the others to join us.
Okay. Okay.
So Carrie, the Malibu city manager spoke very highly of you last night
Oh, good.
at the meeting and said that everything was kissy and that the city was withdrawing its objections and had reached a working agreement with the school district, and that a planning department staff would be at your meeting tomorrow to say so.
Oh, that's great. They said so. I felt like we were able to sort of make our working relationship and sort of clear out some of the challenges on that.
Well, it was nice for you to get a little taste of what we Malibu homeowners so know and love about our city planning department.
It'd been nice for you, Hans. I don't know if it was nice for us.
Welcome to our world.
Oh, we've lived in it for a few years now, I have to
That's
say.
true.
It's-
That's true. That's true. I went to them and said, I want to put a bladder, a farmer's bladder, which is like a big 2,000-gallon water tank
Mhm.
in my driveway for fire season, and leave it there for, fill it up in November, and in January start watering my grass with it. And they looked at me like they wanted me to do engineering studies on the bladder. They wanted me to do a perk test study. They wanted me to do a geologic. My house is on a flat piece of dirt. They wanted me to do a structural study for my driveway.
Uh-huh.
And I think they wanted me to do a certificate of service from the Waterworks 29.
Uh-huh.
And I think they wanted a chemical analysis of how I would dispose of the water. What would be in the water beyond H2O and a little health department chlorine when I sprinkle it on the grass. I'm not making this up. They wanted all of this from me before they would.
I'm not surprised. It is par for our experience, I have to say.
Would you consider just doing it in the garage and leaving the garage door open, closed for the next couple months?
No, I got a bootleg like everyone else, a room in there. No one can do that in Malibu.
Fair enough.
No, but what I'm going to do, in all seriousness, if I do it, I'm waiting for a more serious fire season, is I'm just going to put it on a freaking trailer.
That's a good point.
And tell them it's on wheels. Screw you.
It's a good solution.
The county is giving me gas about our solar panels up at our transmitter because we built them without permits right after the fire. It's just a structure with solar panels on it, like a chain link fence.
Yeah.
And I told them if you guys really want me to, I'll cut it off and I'll put it on the trailer. I don't care.
Okay. I sent it as an update back to all the other folks, hoping we can get at least one more member, if not the other 4.
I mean, we would need 2 more to have a quorum. We can still have won't be an official meeting, but we can obviously still go forward with this.
Okay, we know it looks like Paul is signed on,
Yes.
so we have 4.
Good. Got a quorum.
So we're still missing Frankie, Jarrell, and Sania. Or Sanaya.
Craig, if you're speaking, you're muted. I see that you're not muted, but we can't hear you.
Hi, Steve. Do you still hear me?
I can
Yes.
hear you, Hans, yes.
Okay.
And I see that Sanaya has joined us, or I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but we'll find out in a moment.
That's why Craig was trying to speak, was I think to tell you the proper pronunciation.
Well, if it's all right with everyone, I'm going to go ahead and move us forward.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. It's
Yeah.
Sonia.
Sonia. Oh, okay. I'll pronounce it better. Hello. And we're still waiting for Frankie and Jarrell, but let's go ahead and get us going. Hello, I'm Kerry Upton. I'm the Chief Operations Officer, and for this meeting, I'm going to help run it. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. What we will do is we wanted y'all to get to know each other a little bit, and then next meeting we'll have you appoint a chair, a vice chair for the meeting, and we'll agendize that for the next meeting. But our first thing on our agenda is actually introductions and orientation. So maybe if someone would say who it is they are and what their function is, or what their place is in this, and then pass it on to someone else. So call someone else's name after you go. So I'll call on Paul as his hand up.
Hi, I'm Paul Grisani. I'm a 44-year resident of Malibu, and I'm currently the mayor of Malibu, following in the exalted footsteps of Lou Lamont.
Thank you, Paul. I'm Lou Lamont. I was on the city council, as many of you know, for about 9 years. It's really good to see so many of my old friends on this. I'm also on the Malibu Facilities District Advisory Committee and has been since since we used to meet in person in 2019 in the cafeteria. And I'm also working with Sherry Bishop Grego on reviewing construction manager proposals for Malibu High School this week. So I'm definitely involved in every part of this. So thank you. And I would like to introduce Sonia Pearl.
Thank you. I'm Sonia Pearl. I am the PTSA president for Malibu Middle and High School. Sorry, I'm driving, so I don't have my video on, but I'm looking forward to seeing what is happening with regards to the new Malibu High School and facilities, and hearing what everyone has to say. I pass the baton on to Craig Foster.
Okay, I'm Craig Foster. I'm the only Malibu resident on the school board. And I am not a member of this committee. Just to be very clear, you guys are the committee. And I'm here as a board liaison. So it's really and I'm sure they'll explain to you the job of the Oversight Committee. I'm here to be supportive of that. And also Maria Leon Vasquez, who couldn't make it tonight, is the second board liaison to this committee. So we're here to answer any questions and do anything we can. It looks like, going down my list, Hans is on my list. Hans, let's take it away.
Thank you. I've been living in Malibu Park for 24 years, and I have been a huge supporter of building projects at the school as a site-based committee member when my kids were working their way through up and they've matriculated on. So I have a little bit of institutional memory, and I was former president of the Malibu Park Homeowners Association for a long time, back when these projects were gleams in our eyes, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm a reporter, and I'm not here looking for stories. I'll make that clear. Who should I introduce? I don't see everybody, so I don't know who's next.
I think the rest is staff and.
Actually,
Melissa.
introduce Melissa, and she's the last member who's here.
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
then
Hi, I'm also in my car, sorry. Melissa Mastropolito. We've been in the school district since '97, have 5 kids. So I'm on my last one at the elementary school. I'm on the FDAC committee, and I'm also on the Malibu Elementary PTA, and just super happy to be a part of all this. Thank you.
And then I'll turn it just to the other staff members and other visitors and people who are here. So Steve.
Hey, Carrie, can I just stick in the last 2 members so everybody knows who the rest of the
Oh,
committee
yes,
is?
please.
So Frankie Palmer was a member of the Shark Fund when this committee was formed. She is now a former parent of Malibu High School student. And Jarrell Taylor, I think his kids are all still at Webster, but he's on the Webster Site Council, and I believe Webster PTA as well. And those are the last 2 members who aren't present of this committee, as far as I can tell. Sorry
Great.
to interrupt.
No, thank you for doing that. And Steve?
Everyone, I'm Steve Massetti. I'm the bond program manager for the school district. So I oversee the bond construction in both Santa Monica and Malibu. We do have a deputy program manager who oversees the Malibu work, who's not with us this evening. We may have her join us at some future meetings. It's Noemi Avila-Zamudio. But you'll see Carrie and myself at every meeting.
Great. And then Ashraf?
Hi, I'm Ashraf Kimani. I'm a district employee I'm with the district for 27 years. I'm a bond accountant. And I do all the financials.
Yes, and Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Stabe. I'm the admin assistant for the FIP office.
And Gerardo?
Hi there, Gerardo Cruz, Director of Fiscal and Business Services, and we help both Ashraf and Melody and Shiloh, our auditor here, compile your audit report for review.
Great. And then Melody?
Hi, Melody Kennedy. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Fiscal Services for Santa Monica-Malibu Unified School District.
Thank you. And then we have two special guests. We have Shiloh Grosby. I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, who is our auditor, who will be presenting the audit report. And then Serene Abrahamian, who is an attorney with us with Orbach Huff. So I don't know if Shiloh, if you want to say hello, and then I'll have Serene say hello.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here tonight.
Thank you. And then Serene.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me.
I just learned that Serene has a really great presentation that actually breaks down what a Prop 39 Bond Oversight Committee does. And so we might have her back at the next meeting just to sort of go over those details. Specifically, you are the bond oversight for Measure M, which, as you know, is the Malibu only under a school facility improvement district. It was just including the area of Malibu and some of the the city, the parts of the county that are part of our school district. Unincorporated. That was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Your function is to make sure that what we're doing with the funds match what's in the bond, what was in the bond language, and that we are handling those funds correctly. You're a little different than the Facility District Advisory Committee, which sort of guides us as we make decisions on what to build and what to create. And this is a little different than your oversight, which is to make sure that all the funds are appropriately spent. And that's a good beginning. But then I'll take us, I'll go right to Serene and a second order of business.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Carrie. Jarrell and Frankie have joined us. Perhaps
oh, great. Thank you.
Have them do an introduction, and then at least because you and I will be here consistently, maybe we could tell them who we are as well.
Okay. Hello, Jarrell. Would you like to introduce yourself? I'm Carrie Upton. I'm the Chief Operations Officer.
Hello there. I'm Jarrell Taylor, parent of son in the Santa Monica-Malibu School District, and I am happy to serve.
Thank you. And Frankie.
Hi, I'm Frankie Palmer. My daughter Samantha graduated last year from Malibu High, and I'm happy to help out.
Terrific. Thank you. And as Steve said, I will lead you, and tonight I'm sort of leading the meeting, and then next time we'll have y'all appoint a chair for the committee. And then Steve Massetti, who's our bond program manager, is the other person you'll sort of regularly see in this group. Serene, would you like to please lead us in through our Brown Act training?
Sure. Hopefully you can all see that. Let me put it into presentation mode. So good evening. For the two new members who joined, I'm Serene Abrahamian. I'm counsel to the district. I actually assist on a lot of facilities matters. I'm here tonight to give the Brown Act presentation. When we refer to the Brown Act, it's the Ralph M. Brown Act. And what I'm going to be covering specifically are rules that govern committee members and committee meetings such as this one that are open to the public. So let me change this view a little bit so I can see my screen. Sorry. The Ralph M. Brown Act is also referred to as the Open Meeting Act. It was enacted in 1953, and you see there that we've got the government code sections identified where you can find the entirety of the Brown Act. The primary purpose is to provide some structure to meetings such as this one, again, that are open and available to the public for both attendance and participation. And the purpose is for all of the deliberative processes of legislative bodies or committees that are board appointed, such as this one, that are open and available for public scrutiny. And that also all persons permitted to attend, of course, have notice of the meetings, and these meetings are open and public, and that these persons shall be permitted to attend and participate in what the legislative body, or in this case, the committee, is reviewing and considering. Moving on to the next slide. Again, just a little bit more about the purpose, which is really important, of the Brown Act. Again, to ensure that there's an open and transparent mechanism by which governing bodies of local public agencies conduct the people's business, to keep the public informed, and again, to provide a procedural framework for these types of meetings to debate, act, and listen collectively to, in this instance, the district's constituents. A question we often get is, would an advisory committee or standing committee such as this one be considered a legislative body under the Brown Act and subject to those rules? And the answer is yes. As you see there, what a quote unquote legislative body is in terms of how it's defined, it also includes advisory committees or standing committees such as this one, that have continuing subject matter jurisdiction. And I think both these things apply: continuing subject matter jurisdiction, and in this case, fixed meeting schedules, and are board appointed, as this committee would be. What's important to note, and why there's an emphasis, and we're doing this at the very first meeting, is that once elected, or in this case appointed, members serving on a committee like this one are required to know what's, of course, in the Brown Act, and what their obligations and what controls their actions in meetings such as this one. And again, just to note that it applies to members of a legislative body, all members of a legislative body such as this one, or committee such as this one, and any person, in this case, appointed to serve on a committee such as this one, who has not yet assumed the duties of office, is also expected to know what's required of them under the Brown Act. And again, that's why, like, for example, when school boards go to what we call the California School Board Association meetings, which typically are held in December, Brown Act training is such a big part of what they receive at those conventions. What we're going to talk about for a few slides is what constitutes a meeting. A meeting, in a traditional sense, is where a majority of the members of the legislative body meet at the same time and location. Of course, now, due to COVID, and because we're living in a more virtual world, that's changed a little bit. So, of course, even meetings that occur via teleconference and virtual meetings should be considered as part of that. To hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of, in this case, the committee. And you'll see that there's a test that I'll touch on in a couple slides that helps kind of drive this point of what's a meeting home. And again, any use of direct communication, personal, intermediary, or technological devices that's employed by a majority of the members to develop a collective concurrence. And we'll see this as part of a test that we'll cover in a couple slides regarding what constitutes a meeting. And this collective concurrence can be garnered either through telephone, email, virtual meetings, social media, and we'll see some examples of that, and even by communications through an intermediary. One thing that's kind of easy to differentiate when we're thinking about meetings is, of course, less substantive and more procedural matters can be considered outside of what's typically considered a meeting for committees such as this one. And some examples of that are for superintendent's weekly reports at school board meetings, for example, or procedural or administrative matters like scheduling meetings, determining agendas, times allotted to each of them. So these types of procedural matters are outside of what we're focused on here for purposes of what constitutes a meeting. So this is the test I was referring to a couple minutes ago. If a discussion can potentially contribute to developing, again, this collective concurrence, it likely constitutes a meeting for Brown Act purposes. Even if the committee member does not participate in the discussion, the mere act of listening may contribute to developing a collective concurrence. And again, that's a collective concurrence for subject matters that are under the jurisdiction of that committee. I just want to keep emphasizing that that's also part of the test. Common scenarios that are likely meetings, so which we run into and can constitute meetings: group texts and emails. messages in which a majority of the committee is copied. That can include forwards of emails and replies, and may constitute what we call a serial meeting. Hub of a wheel, consecutive conversations through an intermediary to poll the committee. Daisy chain, where you have consecutive conversations from one person to another that again is polling the committee on various topics. And what we'll get into a little bit more in the next couple of slides, which is internet and blogs and how to conduct as a committee member yourself within a social media environment. So in this case, the example is listservs, which is what's often referred to as blogs, where committee members may post comments or responses. That can lead to a collective concurrence, back to that test that we covered a slide ago. So because of this murkier world of social media and wanting to bring some structure to social media interactions and provide some guidance for committee members, effective January 1, 2021, and you can see that it amended Government Code Section 54952.2. AB 992 clarifies which social media interactions are not in violation of the Brown Act, and again provides some structure and clarity to the interactions that may likely already be happening, which are happening on many platforms. And you see there, this applies to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, really any of the ones that you can think of, and can occur in chat rooms and forums, comment section on blogs, and online media. So just to go over generally what it covers, AB 992 is committee members may answer questions and provide information to members of the public in these forums. What a majority of members may not do, similar to the test we just covered, is discuss amongst themselves a matter which is within the committee's subject matter jurisdiction. And again, because that's going to lead to a collective concurrence or a quote unquote meeting. And committee members are prohibited, it goes a step further, from communicating directly with other members regarding any matter which is within the committee's subject matter jurisdiction. And what's important to note is communicating goes beyond, writing words. It can be using digital icons like emojis, thumbs up, anything that expresses a like that could potentially lead to the developing of a collective concurrence. And these provisions will remain in effect until January 1, 2026. And we anticipate that they will be further extended, if not clarified even further, because of the changing world of social media. Common scenarios that are likely not meetings, and again, keeping in mind that as long as the majority of members do not discuss amongst themselves topics that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of that body, these are not considered meetings. Of course, if there's no quorum, where it's just individual contacts or conversations between a member of the committee and any other person. General meetings, the attendance of a majority of members at a conference or similar gathering that discuss or where there's a discussion of issues of general interest to the public. Community meetings, a majority of the members can attend a community meeting of another legislative body that's open and publicized, again, as long as the majority of the members are not discussing amongst themselves and reaching a collective concurrence. Public entity meetings, the attendance of majority of members at an open and notice meeting of another body or local agency. Parties, that's good news. The attendance of a majority of members at a purely social or ceremonial occasion. And then of course, district meetings. The majority of members of a committee such as this one can attend an open and notice standing committee meeting of course, another body. Again, as long as there isn't a collective concurrence as to matters that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. Here, we're just going to cover some requirements of agendas that are posted for committees such as this one and what they should contain. Of course, they should be posted 72 hours before a regular meeting, which is typically what you'll encounter here, and 24 hours before a special meeting. They should contain sufficient detail to allow the public to determine whether to participate, because that goes back to the purpose of why the Brown Act was enacted, so that the public can have enough information and be part and participate in committee meetings such as this one. Exceptions to standard agenda requirements, if there's an emergency, if there's a need to take immediate action after the agenda was posted, or to make a brief announcement or brief report of activity. Just to provide some background, this is really a background for the next slide, but how some of these rules have changed regarding some of the open meeting laws and rules during the COVID period. Executive Order N2920 and preceding orders permitted committees such as this one to meet by telephone or video conference. So what these orders did is suspended requirements that normally applied. You could always do teleconference meetings where, but each teleconference location had to be noticed and accessible to the public. And there were other requirements related to that. Those were, of course, loosened to meet some of what was the committees and boards and other legislative bodies were encountering during COVID. But of course, you still require that the public is given notice 72-hour, 24-hour of the meetings and is provided with methods for observing those meetings. That was required all the way through. Order N0821 extended these flexibilities through September 30, 2021. And more recently, well, before September 30, 2021, thankfully, Governor Newsom signed into law AB 361, which permits local agencies to conduct public meetings virtually during a declared local or state emergency without having to rely on executive orders, because of course that was school district staff and especially executive staff and committees and boards were trying to follow very closely how, if in fact they'd be able to continue with the teleconference and remote meetings. And so this answered that question. A local agency that wishes to utilize the remote meeting provisions must find the state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of members to meet safely, or that state or local officials continue to impose or recommend measures to promote social distancing. And these findings have to be made every 30 days via resolution as to whether the circumstances justify teleconferencing. And unless further extended, AB 361 will sunset on January 31, 2024. But just like with AB 992, we anticipate that this will continue to be allowed with different structures being put in place. Of course, something we hope none of you encounter, and which is why we do these Brown Act trainings, is that there are, of course, violations of the Brown Act that, you know, and what can occur in those instances. Misdemeanor liability exists if there is a quote unquote intent to deprive the public of information. The public can sue to stop the violation of under the Brown Act. Some mechanisms by which these violations or alleged violations can possibly be remedied is by, for example, with school boards or other legislative bodies, audio recordings of closed session. The agency must be given an opportunity to cure the violation, and there can be a nullification of the action that was taken that's in violation if it's found that in fact it was in violation. And just one last slide, and I see a hand raised, and then we'll get to questions. And then just to say that the district attorney or any interested person can commence an action to stop or prevent violations under the Brown Act, and the court may award costs and reasonable attorney's fees to the plaintiff in the action. And that's the end of the presentation. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it back over to Carrie to take questions.
Yes, are there any questions? I see, Paul, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm very surprised to hear that we're advocating recording closed sessions. And I thought that I'm a member of the city council, and when we have a closed session, it's because it's either a litigation or an employment type issue. And I don't understand if we record the meeting, then obviously at some point it's going to be the conversations that hopefully end up with a unanimous decision to do something will be exposed for everything. And I'm just what are we preventing by recording closed sessions?
Well, and of course, this is a more involved discussion. It's really hard to boil down what the possible remedies are to a potential closed session or a Brown Act violation into a couple slides. But that's just an example of one mechanism by which the potential or what's being claimed as a potential Brown Act violation can be remedied. We're not advocating for that. I'm just expressing that that can be a remedy if it's determined that there was a potential violation.
Serene, in that case, that would be a court-ordered remedy, correct?
Correct.
This isn't
yes.
something that the district does. It's, I'm sure, not something that the city would do unless it was ordered to do so.
Yeah.
So this would be something that you hold in case somebody claims that some improper discussion took place during that time that was not covered by the agenda for the closed session. And so the remedy then would be to produce the recording and have some.
You could have a judge, I mean, a judge could order it and review it himself to determine whether or not it was in compliance, I would imagine.
Whether or not the matter was discussed.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
I've always found it was really interesting that the legislature that passed the Brown Act never has to abide by it.
Are there any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Serene, and hopefully we will all be positive uses. We'll be following the Brown Act for this committee and not have to call you again for that purpose.
Yeah, we won't make it to those last two slides. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for having me tonight. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, then our next order of business is an action item for you all to accept the bond report for Measure M. And I know that was sent to you before, and Shiloh, I think, is going to be presenting with this. And unless any questions, we'll jump right into that next part.
All right.
And just to say, we have Melody and Ashraf and Gerardo here to take questions if any others come up.
Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for you. And hopefully you're all able to see my screen now. And since this is the first time presenting this report to this committee, I'll explain a couple additional components or maybe explain it in a little bit more detail for you. And if you have questions, of course, I'm always willing to take those questions as well. So, this part of your role in receiving the audit report for Measure M on an annual basis is going to include two components. The Measure M audit report has to include both a financial audit as well as a performance audit. The financial audit is going to be presented as the set of financial statements specific to Measure M, and we provide an opinion on whether those financial statements are materially stated based on our audit. And then the second piece of the report is what we refer to as a performance audit. And that's the piece that probably has the most interest to the users, as that's the part of the audit where we look at the expenditures to determine whether or not expenditures are in accordance with the ballot language that was approved by the voters. So it's really more of what we would look at as the compliance portion of the audit. So I'll go through both of those reports for you. And what you see right now is the independent auditor's report. This is specific to the financial statement audit. Our goal in an audit over the financial statements is to provide you with reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially stated based on our audit. And there's different levels of an opinion that we can provide in an audit. So this opinion is an unmodified opinion. And an unmodified opinion is actually the highest level of assurance that an auditor can give. It does mean that the financial statements are materially stated based on our audit. So as you read through that, essentially your opinion is the first paragraph on the second page, and it says exactly that. In our opinion, the financial statements are materially stated as of June 30, 2021. we talk about the emphasis of the matter. What we do in this paragraph here, if you read through, our goal is really just to make sure that the user, whoever's reading this report, understands that this report is solely related to Measure M, and it does not include the district in its entirety as a whole. So that's why we call it an emphasis of a matter. We want to make sure the user understands that this is just a small component of the district as a whole, and it is only designed to speak to Measure M. Just to kind of look real quick at the financial statements as of June 30. So this is what your balance sheet looked like. There was about 18.8 million left at the end of June 30, 2021 in Measure M funds available for future projects. And on your income statement, what you would see here is that for the year ended June 30, 2021, probably the biggest piece is of the bonds that have been issued in that fiscal year, the district has spent about 9.6 million. So there's a bunch of footnotes that follow the financial statements and gives you some details regarding those financial statements. I won't go into the details of the footnotes. What I will bring your attention to is maybe just a couple that have the most relevance. This footnote number 5 really lays out for you what's really on the slate right now in terms of Measure M, meaning what our commitments are outstanding at year end. These are probably all related to projects that you're hearing about that are currently in process. The largest one of that being, as you can see, the Malibu campus plan phase 1. So that's just really a snippet of what's to come in terms of what's committed. And then in note 6 at the bottom, probably just to make note of the fact that as you're winding down the current proceeds, you can see that the district did plan and is issuing another 80 million in the current fiscal year to continue your spending plan. So more funds to come into Measure M in the current 22 fiscal year. And then since the district is a governmental entity, as part of your financial audit, we are required to provide you this specific report. We call it our report on internal control over the financial reporting. And it's what we refer to as our GAS, or Government Audit Standard Report. You know, our job is not to provide an opinion on internal controls, but it is our job to understand processes, understand internal controls, and if there are control deficiencies that we would classify as significant or material weaknesses, we want to communicate those to the board. And so we would do so through this report. In this particular audit, we did include one, as you read on the top first paragraph on the top of the second page here, we did include what we call a financial statement finding that we did classify as a material weakness. The reason being, it's laid out in more detail in the subsequent pages here. This really ties to when we have an audit adjustment, meaning we had a transaction we identified that we thought needed to be recorded as of year end that wasn't. Timing difference in that transaction of when in this particular case, when the bill was paid to the contractor. So we adjusted the financial statements for that transaction. And as a result of that adjustment, we do classify control deficiency that we report. But the part of the report that you're probably most interested in is the next part. So I did mention the performance audit. So the goal of the performance audit, as I said, whether or not we spent the money appropriately. This is our independent auditor's report on performance. Talks a little bit about what type of performance we're measuring. We're measuring against Article 13, the California Constitution, and then it's also laid out in the 2020-21 audit guide for LEAs in, I believe it's Appendix B, A or B. So we go through our audit based on these criteria. And this second to last paragraph is really where we lay out our results. So the results of our test specific to performance indicated that the Measure M funds were expended on projects that were approved by the voters. So this is no compliance exceptions were noted in this report. The next few pages just talk a little bit about the authority for the issuance, what was the purpose of the Measure M, We pull this information from some of the language that exists in your documents. What authority for the audit, and then we go into more detail about our audit objectives and how we go about our audit, our scope and methodology. So we try to really detail out in this report exactly what we are doing to come to the conclusions that we do come to. Probably the most notable piece of this section of the report is really when you get to this, what page is this? I'm on page 18. And we talk about on number 5, excuse me, our conclusion. Number 5 talks about how we determine compliance. What did we look at? Types of supporting documentation and comparing it to the project list and the voter approved project list. But the conclusion here is the same as in the report itself, that we do believe again that Measure M funds were expended on authorized bond projects. On number 3, I do like to point this one out. As I mentioned to you earlier, the district had spent about $9.6 million for 2021. And when we did our testing, we looked at over 6.9 million of that 9.6 million in our sampling, which is a pretty good coverage in an audit. So we put that in there. Just like I said, these types of reports are designed to provide a lot of transparency and details with how we're conducting the audit. So that's one of the elements we include in our report. And I think when you get to a 72% testing threshold in a sample, that's a pretty high level of coverage. So if there were any findings related to this, you would see them in the subsequent pages. And as I mentioned before, no compliance findings on this Measure M audit. So it's a clean report. And with that, I'll leave this up if you want me to keep sharing, if anybody has any questions and wants to refer to a page, and if not, then I can stop sharing.
Do we have any questions?
I know that's a handful of information that I gave you.
I don't see any hands up or people who are unmuting unless someone has any question. All right, then we'd be going to take a motion and a second to approve the report.
I'll make that motion
Lou?
to approve the report.
And
I'll second.
Paul will second. All in favor, say yay.
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 Yeah.
All against, say nay. And hearing none, then we have an approval of the report. And the next, it will go to the board for their final approval. And just to say, next year, we're going to try to book this in a little bit earlier so that we have this done in late November, early December, so that the board can approve it in December. Sort of our timing was off a little bit this year, and we'll make sure that we get to y'all a little sooner and make sure you see the reports and get those approved earlier. Gerardo or Melody, do you have anything to say?
No. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it.
All
good
right.
work, good work, Gerardo and Ashraf, honestly. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, great work, guys.
All the credits to Ashraf, and thank you, Shiloh. She signed off. She had another meeting, but thanks to her as well. We'll see you
Okay,
guys on the
thank you.
next one.
Thank you, Shiloh.
See you
All
later,
right,
Gerardo.
well, thank y'all. Then we'll move on to program updates. Steve, do you want to show the financial report or shall I?
I would like to. I'm
Okay.
ready to.
Let me make you a co-host. Okay, you're ready?
You see that? Is that up for everyone?
It's up, it's a little tiny, but yes.
Okay. Let me see if I can zoom a little bit. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the format we've been using for our reports to the bond oversight committees. for our other bonds and other measures rather, excuse me. And so we've laid it out here, and if there are questions, or if more specifically, if there are suggestions, a way you'd like to see it differently, let me know, and we can work on either clarifying what needs to be clarified or presenting this differently. What we typically do is we will show expenditures. So we have a couple things shown here. We have total funding on the left-hand column, and then our expenditures are the next several columns. We've broken these expenditures down between hard costs and soft costs. Just by way of explanation, soft costs are costs like architects and engineers, survey, inspectors, construction managers, our attorneys, myself, our staff within the district department. Those are all soft costs. Hard costs are the things that create a structure, a building, a project. So those are the generally hard cost is the construction contractors, and maybe buying materials and things like that. But that's our breakdown. So when you hear those terms, that's what we're talking about. And obviously, if you want any more explanation, please let me know. But what we show is the expenditures up to the prior reporting period. In this case, we're using, this aligns with the audit you just saw. So those are the expenditures in the 2021 fiscal year. And then we show our expenditures since the last reporting period. Now, next time we meet, it will be, the soft costs expended, we'll say through 12/31/21 in that second column there, I guess our third column. And the next one will be probably first quarter. So it would be, 3/31. What we have are a breakdown of the projects on the left-hand side. Some of them are, there's a project and multiple sub-projects like the FF&E replacement, for example. And you'll see that some of them have they have zero cost because the FF&E replacement project as a whole doesn't have individual costs, but we've broken it down to Webster, Malibu Elementary, and Malibu High School. And really, where we say Malibu High in this sense, it's Malibu Middle and High School. So I'm going to run through just some of the things that might stand out. You can see our biggest expenditures so far by, I think, a significant amount is shown here on the Malibu campus plan, but there's a negative number there, which sounds weird, when we're looking at, well, why would you have a negative expenditure? As of June 30th, we had not yet created the project existed. We hadn't created in our accounting system the project for the new high school. So we were of course paying the architect to design it and all of our other consultants to work on it prior to that. So what we've shown is a transfer of those funds of the $3,022,923 out of the Malibu campus plan project and into the Malibu new high school building phase 1 project. So if you balance those two, and you'll see there's about $2.5 million difference between them. The $2.5 million is what we actually spent in the last 6 months, plus the $3 million that we transferred from one to the other. The Malibu campus plan itself is technically a project for us because there are expenditures with that going back to the development of our Malibu campus plan, which is our campus-wide middle and high school master plan. And then there are a few other elements of work that we've done on campus in furtherance of that aren't specifically part of the Malibu High School new construction project. But what you're going to see going forward is that the vast majority of our expenses will come from that new high school building phase 1 project. We'll give an update on the status of that project later. Excuse me. But we're getting ready we've hired the contractor and they're doing their preliminary pre-construction work. But we're trying to get our entitlements to get them working in the field as quickly as we can. A couple other things that you will notice is on the right-hand column, on the far right, we show a couple of projects that were moved from Measure ES. For 3 of them, it was really just completion and kind of wrapping up the work, and that would be the window paint and floor projects at Malibu Elementary School, Malibu High School, again, that's Malibu Middle and High, and then the the HVAC project there was some HVAC work done it's listed as Malibu High and Cabrillo, but the reality is we're not doing work at Cabrillo because we're tearing it down. But that was what the project was envisioned as initially. And then the larger project that was moved, oh, I'm sorry, Webster falls into that as well. In other words, it was just kind of finishing up there. But we did do HVAC installation at Webster as part of this this bond. And I'm trying to see if anything else stands out here. Our centralized expenses down below, it's about 3/4 of the way down the page. You'll see that that's a number that it grows and then shrinks every year, or probably every reporting period. The reason for that is that we allocate our centralized expenses, and again, that's things like our FIP consultants and our FIP staff time, and then every year, close of the fiscal year, those funds get distributed to the projects. So the expenditures will go from we have 1.5 million right now, and they'll drop down to that's the overall commitment. Our expenditures, for example, in this reporting period were 490,000. Eventually, you're going to see that gets distributed to our projects, which is why we show $0 in expended as of June 30th. At the very bottom, well, not the summary lines, but above that, you'll see that there are two shortfall items. These are funding that is needed to complete the projects from Measure BB and Measure ES. A big chunk of that is the new building that was recently completed. That project was significantly over the available budget from BB, and then obviously drew a significant amount of funding from Measure ES as well. That's the one that was delayed for years and years through some conflict between the community group and the district trying to get the project to be acceptable to everyone. And eventually we got there, and the building is built, and it's beautiful, and it's being used. But there are funds that were needed from Measure M to close that project out. So that's those two lines at the near the bottom. You see a negative number of $517,415 that is shown as budget available. We're showing that because the numbers, the overall budget totals $195,517,415, and that difference, that 517,000, is the interest that was received on the bonds that were sold. Now that's probably, well, it's certainly not an up-to-date number. Of course, we earn interest constantly on the money that's sitting in the bank, and we have since sold bonds. I think Shiloh mentioned that the day after the close of I believe it was coincidental, but the day after the close of fiscal year 2021, the district issued another $80 million in bonds for Measure M, and obviously we've been earning interest on that as well. So that number will also change as we report this at every meeting, and you'll see that it increases. So what this brings us to is, the funding has all been allocated to the projects that are listed. We do have some projects where the budget is pretty tight, and that's, I don't know, I think it's always a little bit concerning, especially in an environment where we've seen cost escalation for a couple of reasons. I mean, we see it on the labor side, but we also see it on materials. So, we're not only are materials harder to get, they're taking longer and costing more. So it's been an impact on a lot of our projects, and I anticipate that it will continue to be as we go forward. Are there any questions on this, or any questions about the format, or if I did not explain something fully, I'd be happy to answer them. I don't see everybody here.
Is this updated quarterly or monthly? How is this updated?
So generally, it will be updated to the quarter that ended prior to the meeting that we have. So if we're meeting in May, for example, we will show through the end of first quarter and third quarter, I guess, of March 30th. And then, of course, we would always update it for the close of the fiscal year and on June 30th. But it's something that's updated as needed. Ashraf runs these numbers back to up to the most recently ended quarter. Does that answer your question, Jarrell?
Yeah, just want to know if it was parallel with the district timing and so forth, so.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Sonia?
Yeah, I'm just curious, I mean, of course, as you said, we've taken some of those monies already and the costs are high. So have there been any modifications in the, in the project to, accommodate, within the budget, or are we planning to, get more money to complete the project? Like, what's the thought?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as we've been designing the phase 1 project, the new high school, we've worked with our architects and now our contractor to accurately budget this. So, I mean, we have a budget, we've established the budget on the project. They've put together cost estimates. We had each of them put together an independent cost estimate. So the architects used their estimator and said it's going to cost X, and the contractor used their estimators and said it's going to cost Y. And of course, those things don't exactly match. So we put them together and said that we needed to come to some justification. They needed to agree on what the number was, and they did that, and it was above our budgeted amount. So we sent them back to the drawing board, and we did what's called value engineering, where we have them design changes that don't impact the use of the building, but do impact the cost. And in some cases, there are things like materials change, right? So we may not use quite as expensive of a finish because we know that we've got to cut costs. So we've gone through that process, and the contractor is now weeks away from bidding the first part of the work. So the way this works is, in a smaller contract, we put the entire project out to bid, and we get the bids and we open them, and we award to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. This is being done with under the lease-leaseback method. So we've hired the contractor, and then they bid out the elements of work. So they'll bid out, the grading to a grading contractor. They'll bid out abatement and demolition, perhaps to one contractor, or maybe to a separate abatement contractor and demolition contractor. They then compile all of those costs. They bring them to us. This is an open book process where we see their bids. And there are times where, so it is publicly bid, and then the decision is typically made to go with the lowest bidder. But there are times where we may say, that bidder doesn't work because of this, or the contractor may say, I recommend going with the second low bidder because I don't trust this first guy, or I can see that he's made a mistake and he doesn't think he has. And then we have the discretion to award to a second low bid. But for the most part, we almost always end up with the low bids. If we get to the point where the cost comes in and it's over budget, then we need to take another step back and do more value engineering and potentially eliminate elements of work. But our idea is, of course, not to have to do that. So we've been working closely with the architects and architects and contractors to get to the point where we're going to be on budget. But until we have those hard numbers, I can't say for sure that we're there. Does that answer your question? I know it's a long answer, but does it answer the question you asked?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. So, it's kind of a wait and watch, right? Depending on the bid process and how things progress.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of wait and watch. That's correct. But we also, we're proactively looking at what the costs are or what they're going to be. And we've been working with our team to, cut those as much as we can to get down to the budget that we have.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any other questions on that, or should we move on to the next thing? Carrie, sounds like we can move on. Carrie, I think the next thing is actually talking about building G and interim projects. Do you mind taking that one real quick? You're muted though. Carrie, you're muted.
I am just talking away without being muted. Just want to say that, you know, some of the work we're doing is around interim projects, things that we can do in preparation for what's coming and as we need things. So the two-story building D, was taken down about a year ago and opened up the quad area. This in the last few months and seasons starting last summer, we took down building G, which was the special education and shops building, and we prepared that site to move some of the portables from Cabrillo over to that site. Another thing we needed to do as part of that building going down was we installed an outdoor kiln and sculpture area out back behind the art building, so that can still keep moving, so we can, you know, we're making sure that classes can be continuing while we move forward with our next phase. I will say with building G going down, that means that all known areas that had PCBs are either demolished, abated, or taken out of service. Many of them were demolished already. A few areas where we had them in the flooring, they've been abated and then they've been appropriately encapsulated. And then we have a regular O&M plan, operation management plan, to make sure that they are not leaching PCBs. And then in a few rooms in the the old gym, we've just closed them off because it was just more work to be able to solve them for a building that we're eventually going to tear down. So we are, according to the court order, we are PCB free, and we will be closing out that court order sometime very soon. So that was part of the interim projects that we've handled and taken care of. For the anything else of that you want to say, or I'm going to go on to Malibu, for phase one plan.
We can talk about phase one.
Okay. I'm actually going to bring up, and I'm just going to skip through it really quickly. It's a little bit of an old presentation, but it gives you a few images to look at. Let me bring that up now.
Thanks, Carrie. I was actually just looking for that while we were.
Yeah, this is the one we did for the Board of Education. So can you all see this presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the one we did for the Board of Education, actually back in April, but it's it's the one that sort of gives you the best sort of view of it. If I go to full screen, you can see it. Okay, I'm going to skip through this very, very fast. So first off, just to say, as part of our campus planning and part of phase one planning, we had lots of meetings. We met with a lot of important stakeholders, met with a lot of people at the site, a lot of our different groups, you know, who had things to say about this. You know, there was a lot of steps. If you've seen also the meeting scheduled for the master plan, we met with, I feel like everyone, but we really tried to connect with everyone. I'm going to skip through some of today's education. This was what our architect put together. And sort of talk about, you know, in our process, we are going from the master plan with the phase one, and it sort of kept adapting, you know, from the existing plan. Mostly we're going to be looking at this Cabrillo area, which is where the new high school will be. And so this was what coming from the master plan, you know, where you had the middle school quad, the high school area, and then our joint use and, you know, shared use facilities here. We sort of moved on, you know, with parking and sort of our blacktop areas. And then sort of phasing, saying high school buildings phase one, middle school phase two, the gym and pool phase three, and the performing arts and a few other buildings as part of phase four is what our current plan is. Gonna just move along. Connections, openings. We looked at a couple of different shapes for this new building. And then finally sort of decided on this H, or sort of courtyard shape that and how it fits into the space. You can see it on the site plan. This is with Cabrillo laid over. And then sort of how it sort of works is, you know, because one of the driving goals for this was to separate the middle school and the high school. So landscape strategies. So the big part of this is actually moving away from the stream or the environmentally sensitive habitat area. Right now, you know, Cabrillo and the bus barn and everything sort of hang over into that area. So part of the goal was to move away from that and then bring the traffic and the driving over to the edge of the campus as opposed to through the middle of the campus. So no longer will be using this area, but we do have a bus drop-off area here to separate buses and cars and get those off of Morning View. A small parking lot here, and then the driveway and drop-off that takes people up to the student parking lot. And this is part of phase one. Then our outdoor learning areas, and you know, and one of the things we realized was that you know, many people moved to Malibu to have wonderful views of the oceans and the hills. And our previous campus, you know, Cabrillo, pretty much turned its back on one of our best views. So this building is all about enjoying, having the students being able to enjoy this view. That was not the right button. Okay, so here's a sort of quick layout of the building. It's got 2 stories, common areas. The idea is that, you know, it's a very progressive educational building where we use different spaces, different ways. It's not so much everybody's in a class, but every area of the building is considered a learning area. And a lot of sort of breakout spaces. So not everything happens in the classroom. You know, a lot of times the idea is to let the students go and work in small groups, work individually. And then sometimes they come in for lectures, sometimes they go to presentations, sometimes they work in larger groups, and sort of having a campus that actually supports that type of flexibility and project-based learning. So sort of admin areas, science areas, math, humanities, and how they are sort of distributed through the entire space and these cross-grain connections. And I'm just going to go through this sort of, we could go on this, but this is sort of what we're planning as far as where different rooms and study areas and outdoor learning areas, really using our environment. The campus is built as much as possible and designed to fit within Malibu. And even though some of the materials in this might look very wood, they're actually metal, so it's very flame proof. And we really took how we were laying out the campus to make sure that we were appropriate for fire safety and the other elements that make up our environment. So corrugated metal, you know, concrete, our native landscapes, and sort of here's a view sort of our outdoor classrooms. Sort of how we will use the space. Making sure the landscaping is part of the learning and also our social landscapes. So we're very excited about this campus and what we're going to do for the high school. And we are currently let me see if I can find myself a way to stop sharing. We are in the Division of State Architects for approval. It's in 2 different packages. There's sort of an early package, which is the early grading utilities, and then there's a second package, which is the construction. And then in a moment, we'll talk about entitlements, but that's sort of where we're going with this very large and very important phase 1 of the Malibu campus plan. Any questions about this? Or Steve, did I leave anything out?
No, I think you covered it.
Any questions or thoughts? So,
I mean, I would say that, you know, all the feedback we've gotten has been really, really positive. We had, as Carrie mentioned, you know, we had scores of meetings prior to embarking on design and then throughout design with community groups, but also with students and with teachers. And, you know, a lot of, obviously the site was very involved with that. Generally, the feedback from there has been very good. Our FDAC has been really strongly supportive of this. I think probably Lou and Melissa could speak to that better than I could. And you know, obviously Lou and Melissa have seen this and other presentations a number of times as part of that committee. Lou, anything that you think needs to be added?
Yeah, I will say, there is, there's been kind of, as you all know, this kind of cloud over this whole project because of our unification efforts. But I do want to say that that has never entered into anything that we have discussed. And it has never been a political process. And I have to tell you, the architects are very, they listened to us, they did what we asked them to do, and they've been really incredibly supportive, not only of Malibu, but the Malibu way of doing things. And for me, that's more important than anything. And you listen to the parents, and we had one issue early on about separating the middle school and high school, which is was a major issue in Malibu, and that's, I think, been solved. And I just want to thank everyone that's been involved in this for putting all the other stuff away and just talking about building probably the best looking school around. So thank you all.
Thanks, Lou. Carrie, it looks like Sonia has had her hand up, and then I think Paul has something to say as well.
Oh, great. So
I guess I was wrong about Paul, but Sonia does have her hand up.
Sonia first, yes.
All right, thank you. So the plans look great. I'm really excited about the new high school building. Just a few things, that we see right now in our middle school new building and the campus is that, when it's a very open campus, right now with our campus being so kind of open and there's no covering. And so students are asking for covering. I mean, especially at this time, during COVID, they're having classes like band and orchestra outside, and with the sun, etc. They're looking for covering. So that's something to keep in mind. And another thing is our lockers. Our new building has no lockers, and so kids are going back and forth with heavy bags. So when designing new buildings, and I love the space, etc., but sometimes you also need to look at utilitarian factors. And it seems really easy, but now we're having a really hard time getting lockers into our schools.
Yeah, I want to say just to comment on both of those things with the locker question. That was, one of the wonderful bits about the BB project taking the time it did is that the decisions and some of the decision makers were, back about a decade ago. And so at that time, both the people who designed that building, the AB building, which we really appreciate, was designed without lockers. And the district has pretty much moved away from lockers for middle schools and high schools. Right now, the high school building is being designed without lockers, and there seems to be an agreement on that. But I do appreciate that at the middle school, there is more of a push and need to maybe add those in, and that is something we are looking at. Also, the shade is another thing we are looking at. We feel like we've gotten a little bit better idea of where we could put some shade structures that won't impact the next construction. We've had some work done on that. We're still doing a little more work and deciding on that. Our next question is going to be funding. Is making sure we have funding to do that. We sort of would like to lock in the high school building and make sure we have the funds to build the high school before we add any additional projects. So that's where we are in the process, and we're going to have a deeper conversation about that at the next FDAC meeting.
Okay, I just want to make sure that, time is of essence. I just want to make sure that the current students don't get gypped of, coverings and locker space as we're moving forward to a new building. Because, I know there's only a finite amount of money, but at the same time, looking at what's essential short term is also important.
Yes. Are there any other questions about the Malibu campus, the phase 1 plan? If not, we'll talk a little bit about entitlements.
Feels like we could go on to that.
Okay, so as I said, we're in the Division of State Architects. As you all probably know, we have to get our permits from the Division of State Architects, and that is in and it's moving along appropriately. Do you have the dates when we think we're going to get out of DSA, Steve?
No, and it's in large part dependent on the sewer issue. If we need to redesign something, but we now think we don't. But I don't recall what our expected date is. We expect to be able to have increment 1 in order to start this summer, and then increment 2 would be in time for the November start that we had talked about, but I don't know the dates we really think we're going to get them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, was we were coming out in May or June for increment 1 and hoping to come out in September, October for increment 2 was what we were hoping.
I think April's possible for increment 1. You know, again, if we're redesigning the sewer, then the stuff in increment 1 is going to get changed. So that's why I was concerned on Friday. But I think April is probably a possibility for that.
Great. So the next big thing that we had to accomplish was completing the California Environmental Quality Act Environmental Impact Report, the CEQA EIR, for the campus plan. That will be going back to the board tomorrow night for certification. The city planning had some concerns. We seem to have been able to resolve those. And we have a letter that I just received from Anika, our planner there, that says that they are all right with us going ahead and certifying the EIR. So that will be certified. We anticipate it'll be certified tomorrow night. The next two big things with the city we have to do, there's sort of two parts that we have to do. There's what we call the specific plan, and then there is the coastal development permit, the CDP for phase 1. Now, the specific plan, we met with the planners very early on with this project. And one of the challenges is, you know, well, we have one challenge that, you know, the coastal zone and the permitting, and the zoning permits are very much the same in Malibu, which is not like what we usually experience in schools. Usually in schools, we don't really follow the local zoning, but with the coastal plan laid over to the entire area, that's something we follow. But the challenges in the local coastal plan for the city, it doesn't really anticipate building high schools. You know, it's much more for homes and businesses. And so in the institute, there wasn't really a lot sort of to say. And one of the challenges when we build high schools and high school buildings is, you know, we need a little bit more height and we need a little bit more grading. And there's a couple of things that were necessary to build the best high school that we would need. And so to achieve that, the idea with the city was that there would be a specific plan written just for this campus that would govern the work and the zoning and sort of the rules for how we would do this work. So it's a specific plan. We helped with the city's help. We wrote it up. It has been given to the city. Also, we have submitted our coastal, and then, so that has to go through, that has to be approved by planning, the council, and then eventually has to go to coastal commission before we can fully get into construction. So we can get our CDP for this. Now our CDP, we've also put that work in, and that's moving along. Having the CEQA completed was one part of it. There was a little, I want to say a little bit of a disconnect between our original plan, which was that the specific plan was going to go first, and then the coastal development permit was going to follow. And that got sort of jumbled up, but it now looks like we're back on track to have both of them go in April before planning and the council simultaneously at the same time as what's being proposed at the moment. And we feel like if we can really hit all those marks and hit it at the right moment, it won't slow us down. We might be also, though, asking for an administrative permit to begin demo and abatement demo and rough grading before we would get to the point of getting the full, approval for the next part. And we're talking about how we can actually achieve that. We're going to have a meeting with Coastal to make sure they would be okay, that would feel kosher for them. But right now we're moving along, but we are very worried that delays to this entitlements process, and if it does find delay, it could really delay our ability to meet our goal, which is to open this building in August of 2024 for school. And if we delay that, then it's like we look at January of 25 or August of 25. And the more also we delay, the more we're going to see escalation cost, which makes the campus harder, for us to afford building the building. So we are very concerned about hitting our marks as far as it, and we're doing everything on the district side to make sure we are ready and lined up so that we can get this campus constructed, get the kids in it, and spend the taxpayers' money properly. Steve, did I miss anything or did I cover it?
No, I think you've covered it. It's tight. And to Carrie's point, if we miss any of these deadlines for whatever reason, whether the Coastal Commission takes too long or DSA takes too long, it puts completion of the project in jeopardy, on time completion of the project in jeopardy. So, we're doing everything we can to keep pushing these things along.
Any questions about entitlements before we go on to the elementary schools? Okay, hearing none.
Wait, hold on, Carrie.
Oh, is there someone?
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
We have a coastal plan that we do ourselves, and it's not I believe you're far enough away from the ocean that it's not appealable to the Coastal Commission in general. I could be wrong, but that's what I think.
So I think in theory, I think that's correct. In fact, even when we were at Malibu Elementary School, on Point Doom at the time, I feel like that was outside because it's a small range. It's like 500 feet or something.
I think it's 300.
300. Okay, thank you.
So,
but I think the issue was it's not the coastal development permit itself. I think it was. I'm going to get this wrong, Carrie. Is it the specific plan that needs to be?
The specific plan, because it is a change to the local coastal plan, has to be approved by the Coastal Commission, but pretty much the Coastal Commission has said that if you've done it right, they'll be fine with it. It's it's a pass through. But what, in part, they wanted to do it as a specific plan because the Coastal Commission wasn't really as thrilled with the way like the college building was done that had a lot of variances. And they said, don't have variances, write a plan, or change your coastal plan to include institutional construction. And it felt like this was the way to solve that.
That was our recommendation, Carrie, when we went in and met with the previous planning director. Our recommendation was, okay, we don't want to do variances. Let's create a new institutional code or zoning code section for institutional construction. And the city's recommendation was, how about doing the specific plan? And so we're fine with that. Obviously, we're moving forward with that.
Great. Thank you.
Of course.
So hopefully we're able to make our way through this. We're moving along. So at the elementary schools, we completed the work at Malibu Elementary, formerly Point Doom, that added bringing in the air conditioning. We also did the work that we needed to do to bring in portable classrooms and get everything ready to combine Cabrillo and Point Doom into the new Malibu Elementary School. That was finished actually before COVID. And then during COVID, because, we were able to do all of the work at Webster Elementary, upgrading their heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system and fire alarm system while the students were away. So we were able to move that forward in the summer of 20, and we achieved both of those projects. They're both working and functionally happening. The other things we've been working on, safety and security projects. So we have replaced and improved the intrusion alarms at all schools in Malibu. We also brought in cameras to cover the perimeters so that we can help with mostly property and facility management. And the next big thing that we're working on is what's called the bell clocks and PA systems, which also helps with our emergency communications and making sure that all the classrooms we can speak to them. And that is being designed and is coming up to being installed, I think, late in the spring, early in the summer at the 2 elementary schools. And that comes to the end of our program updates. So I have a couple of tentative dates for next meeting. I think we wanted to take another look at those. We won't really say them, but we'll send out, Kathy, who's our administrative assistant, will send out some dates to make sure we want to meet about quarterly, about 4 times a year. And so we want to sort of line it up that we see each other and y'all know what we're doing. At the next one, we will have you appoint a chair and a vice chair. And other than that, are there final questions?
Terry, this might also be a good time to check whether 5 p.m. is a good time generally for most of us. I mean, for our members, of course. And then whether there's a particular day of the week that would not be acceptable. I mean, so for example, we know Paul has city council meetings and we will not set them on city council dates. But if generally there's a day of the week that either works or doesn't work, that'd be great to know, as well as whether 5 o'clock is the right time or some other time. Is everybody okay with any time?
5 o'clock seems to work fine, but you're right about the council meetings and also obviously, the school board meetings, et cetera, so
yeah,
you're around that work.
We always have to work around those, and that's fine. I mean, one of the things we do with some of our committees is we meet on Monday nights because generally we don't have city council meetings or school board meetings or planning, although planning commission I think is Monday in Malibu. So so that's a built-in conflict for Mondays. But anyway, it's we'll work this out with whoever the chair ends up being as we go forward. But if 5 o'clock works, then I think we at least have enough to start on. I think, Carrie, maybe when we get back in person, we can try to have our in-person meetings at the Malibu High campus, in that room down, whatever that room is called downstairs.
Yeah, in the PTA room.
Yeah, and maybe in one of them we can do a tour of the building in case anyone here hasn't been able to see it.
I think that would really be great. Hopefully I would want to do that and, just see what we're doing. And so I think it really helps for you to see what we're doing and what the campuses are, get to visit them. So if there's nothing else, I would hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Terrell? I saw Paul's hand.
Paul moved it.
Okay.
Looks like everybody wants to get out.
Everybody goes. Okay, dinner's ready. All right. Well, thank you all very much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Carrie and Steve?